Hello, what's up? I'm TMP. I'm a pyro main in the game Team Fortress 2, play on various competitive Highlander teams, and I've been playing Team Fortress 2 for way too long, so I have a decent understanding of the pyro and its mechanics and whatnot. Generally, I'm one of the guys who kind of tests it out and tries to find really interesting, cool things with the class. And today I'm going to describe to you the pyro Airblast. Now, Airblast is a really, really weird thing. There's nothing in the game that tells you, oh, hey, the Airblast is like that long or that wide. There's no indication like the TF, like if I were to do TF debug flamethrower, how you can see these flames. There's nothing like that. So, basically, the easiest way to put it is, what the hell is the Airblast? And from like 2 or more years of me trying to break the Airblast, I think this is as good of an answer as I have. And I think it's one of the better answers out there. So, Airblast is not one thing, is the first thing to hit. I'm going to divide it into two separate categories and describe both of them and some of the weirdness of them. The first one is going to be player Airblast. Like, if I'm going to Airblast this medic, for instance, yeah, I'm going to Airblast them like this. I'm not going to Airblast them like this, though. So, I have illustrated a nice little handy thing. It is this. So this diagram should tell me if Airblasting or not. Yeah, you can say Airblasting. No big deal. For the most part, that'll work in about 90% of the situations. This is just like a visual overlay. I don't have it built into a HUD or anything. I actually have it just edited on this program that I'm using right now. And for the most part, as long as he's kind of in this circle, he can be Airblasted. There's not really too much more about this. It's just this cone that extends out. It's a little bit more crazy at this kind of range. Like, it won't be Airblasted like that, but it will be like that kind of stuff. Not quite too much. If that box goes to the center of him, generally you can say he's good. So for the most part, is there anything else to play Airblast? Well, there are a few things. One small thing that is pretty intuitive, but you may not know, is that Airblast height actually depends on what angle you're airblasting him at. Like, for instance, if you airblast from above, if you do something like this, it doesn't go very high. If you do that, it goes higher, and if you do that, it goes even higher. He's getting underneath him. That's why airblasting people up like that is so good, because they can just go flying. Get out here, man. I don't want you here anymore. And there are a few other things that I can illustrate here. The other special thing about player Airblast is what is referred to as Airblast stun. Now, oops, I need to change the yaw. Actually, no, I'll do it like this. So, basically, as you can see here, Scout's running, double jumping, that kind of stuff. If I move him back into me a little bit. Oops, get over here. No. Hold on. I want to make him move into the wall so he gets closer to me. Okay, so, this is a Scout. He runs fast. We'll airblast some more to give me a little bit more distance. And basically, let's say I want to stall this Scout. So, the Scout can do a double jump. And if he's moving forward, oops, let me move backwards. Ah, damn it, I'm going to do yaw 180. This is going to make it a lot easier. I'm sorry, this is really rough to do at this angle. So, Airblast kind of stuns people. I'm going to try to do it where I do it right. Unfortunately, I am terrible at the timing. I do mean absolutely terrible at the timing. But basically, Airblast gets stun, and the easiest way to illustrate that is by doing an Airblast on a Scout right before he double jumps. Something like that. Basically, when you get Airblasted, you actually cancel all movement. Or, it cancels all strafing movement, to be technical. And then it applies a vector based on what you're aiming at. So in this situation, if you've played Scout, you know, because you fought a Pyro before, and he's airblasted you right before you double jump, and then you just go straight up in the air and you're not moving, you're just mad. So there's no other way to put it. That's because the Airblast technically removes the strafing from you. I don't have a I don't have a cleaver scout with me, but you can actually see there that it applies a stun to you, because you can actually hit a cleaver during that moment where you first airblast someone, and it will actually crit. It will. There are videos on YouTube of it, and people on Spuff are like always mad about it for some reason. Complaining about airblast and shit and how it stuns. Stun mechanics are horrible in the game. I don't know. You don't even think it stunned you. But yeah, people do complain about airblast regardless, so it's not too shocking. There are a few other situations that you can do this with that are kind of interesting. Get down there, med. So, a few ways you can apply this to do some stuff. In the past, there was something called ground stall. Now, ground stall was whenever you basically, like, if I were to go to this guy or whoever's on the ground over here. Anyone on the ground over here? No. Okay, get up there. So basically, the soldier's right here. And in the past, I actually have a video of me doing this and whatnot. But you can just do that, and they'll be stunned to the ground. They'll stop moving, go back a little bit. The vector would apply and whatnot, and they go back, but they couldn't move. I'm pretty sure this was due to the stun mechanic in this game. That's what makes the most sense, at least, because the scout stalling was around then too, and that makes the most sense for why that would happen. But there are a few ways you can actually kind of do this nowadays, this kind of ground stalls thing. And the first way to do it is, I'm going to turn on bot mimic, and the first way to do it, as you can see, this guy can move back and forth. Oops. Okay, back on a sec. Anyways, the first way to do it is standing on someone's head and moving. That doesn't sound like it'd be very practical, and it isn't. But this illustrates what the hell happens. So basically, the way to describe it is the vector is pointing upwards for where he wants to go, because when they removed ground stall, they defaulted the vector to always go up no matter what and just have a minimum magnitude that was really small. So when you're on their head, you're causing a collision there, and the vector can't actually move up, so they're still stuck on the ground. But then they can't move because the stall happens. This actually used to happen before ground stall. And the other way to do it, it's more like what ground stall was. It's if you airblast from above while airblasting someone upstairs, they'll do the same thing. Now, unfortunately, unlike old ground stall, it doesn't mini crit anymore whenever you do the reserve shooter. And it won't do that on a soldier either. It'll take stock damage. But for the most part, that's pretty much it with the player airblasts. There's really not too much more to it. So I'm going to talk about projectile. Projectile. Beautiful, good old projectile airblast. Now, first off, this does kind of illustrate. You can reflect stuff that's in this box. But the easiest way to put it is you can reflect stuff that is outside of it. Yeah. So, the easiest way to put it is that airblast for projectiles is different than what it is for people. And it's also a little bit larger. Just a little bit. Not much larger. I'm pretty sure of that at least. So, what airblast for projectiles is more of a giant hitbox around you. It extends out slightly larger. I got bias in this. That's the most obnoxious bug in the game for me right now. But it basically extends around you, and something like if I were to airblast right here, wouldn't do that. But if I were to do this, offset 0, I can actually reflect a rocket. It shoots because of the bounding box. No, this does create some interesting things because of how it does. So first off, I wanted to illustrate something. It's not based on like doing a 180 like that. You can see I'm reflecting right here, and it's going towards my crosshair every time. Oops, that one actually hit me. Let me do that. But for instance, I was aiming right there. And it always goes towards where my crosshair is aiming. So now this can create some interesting things, and if you're a soldier and you've ever faced a good pyro, you've raged at this before. Where they reflect a rocket behind your back. Now this one's actually relatively simple on why it happens. And if you understood what I said there, you're like, oh, that's why it happens. So, the easiest way to describe it is the vector that it says to point the air rocket at is the soldier's back. So he basically yeah, I'll reflect back into the soldier's back and whatnot. The easiest way to put it, since it's aiming behind him, the rocket goes forward and then backwards towards him. And since it switches targets essentially mid-flight, is the way to put it, inside of his hitbox, kinda, it just it hits him pretty much instantly. So it's pretty obnoxious, but basically the illustration of this is that rockets go where you're aiming. There's not much more to it. And they pretty much reliably go where you're aiming. Projectile reflection is also server side. So that big box that travels near you is lag compensated. Or it's laggy. It keeps like going slightly back and forth. So you can actually reflect rockets that are behind you too, based on your ping. If you have really high ping, you can reflect rockets behind you pretty easily, based on where you're at, and it's pretty obnoxious if I do say so myself. But there's really not much more to that. That hitbox isn't lag compensated like the rest of your player is, so you end up doing that kind of stuff. There was something else I was going to talk about, and I'm trying to remember what it was. So I was going to go into it, but it's really not. I guess it's not too big of a deal if that wasn't it. If I come up with it, I will probably remark about it real quick. Other than, let me break it down. So the two airblast types are different. Angle's not really too much of a matter, and the factor, I really have got to buy and sound restarts or something because that's really obnoxious. The cone acts more like on the players, whereas it's a hitbox on the rockets. I'll try to get him to shoot at me. You can actually reflect behind you if you have whatever it is. If you have some lag compensation or well around you, and I don't know, I don't think there's really much anything else. I think you can actually combine the two and get crit cleaver reflex on scouts, which is kind of cool, but I don't think there's really too much more to Airblast that really needs to be talked about. Like things like what you can Airblast, you can just look that up, but for the most part that's really the most in-depth thing. I guess I could talk a little bit more about the vectors of projectile reflection. So there are these things in this map called skyboxes, and I'm fairly confident that those you'll aim at, regardless with that. And I think I'm pretty sure that they're so far away that generally it's actually not going to matter. I don't think it aims off into infinity if you're aiming at a skybox, but I'm not entirely sure. Oh right, yeah, there was something I was going to talk about, and I completely forgot about it. The wonky reflect. The reflect where it goes off in a completely different direction. I don't actually have a video illustration of it, but I'm going to talk about it in like a very theoretical sense, and what may be able to cause it. So basically what it's doing is that it's the way the rockets work and projectiles is that they go wherever you're aiming, and on like land it's pretty easy, but whenever you start introducing lag compensation into it, it becomes a real pain in the ass to determine what the hell you're aiming at. So there are a few things that can maybe happen, and I don't know if it can happen too much, but there are two things that I have in suspicion for these crazy reflex where your rockets are going behind you and stuff. And they're going to sound completely crazy, but I just haven't had the opportunity to test them if they're wrong. The first is hats. I have the theory that you can actually aim at your own hat. That's really weird to say, but wonky reflex can happen if you're clipping into a teammate for sure. We know that already. So if you're clipping into a teammate behind you, reflexing off in completely crazy directions because it's aiming at parts of your teammate that are really close to you, and so it's going off in these really odd abstract directions and really can't aim very well at it. But I have the suspicion that you can actually aim at your own hat, kinda, whenever it gets really laggy on or whatever you have some ping on servers. Like, that sounds like complete bullshit, but it would make some sense because it's happened to people who aren't around teammates, and I think that that's a possibility, but I'm not entirely sure, and I'd have to test it out, and it'd be insanely hard to test. I'm not sure how you'd be able to test it. But the second thing is, and this one is also equally insane, is that I think you can aim at spectators. I'm not entirely sure at that because it's so hard to identify where the hell a spectator is, but I've just noticed it myself whenever I was joking around an MG one day that when someone was spectating me, my rockets tended to go everywhere. So I thought that there was a possibility that you could technically aim at a spectator. And that sounds really weird, but I think spectators are technically camera entities and you may be able to aim at them. I'm not sure. If they have any kind of bounding box, even if they don't collide with anything, there's a chance you can aim at them. And I don't quite understand it all. But those are two examples that may help illustrate why reflections can be wonky sometimes. That's the only thing I can think of because of the way that Airblast works. Airblast doesn't send your rockets in random directions unless you're aiming at something really close to you, in which case it will work out pretty well not. But I don't think that there's really any reliable way to understand that. So I'm going to make a quick recap since it's like 17 minutes of me babbling about Airblast. So there are two completely separate Airblasts. There's the Rocket Airblast, which has this hitbox around you, and there's a Player Airblast, which is the cone in front of you, and whatnot. And they both have their own unique things. Player Airblast stuns, for instance, technically, and that's kind of weird. And Rocket Airblasts and Projectile Airblasts in general go wherever the hell you're aiming at. They get redirected in that direction. And this can actually cause rockets to go backwards at at them, as well as if a teammate is clipping through you, go backwards into you and into the ceiling and that kind of crap. But yeah, there's not actually too much more that I can really describe without it making no sense whatsoever and being completely theory crafting like I was at the end. But for the most part, reflection is pretty simple if you understand some of the things to it. It's hard to grasp some of the things and understand why, but it can be kind of cool to understand why the Airblast works this way, and I'm not entirely sure I know why the Airblast works the way it does, but who knows. One day I think we'll have a better idea with the Airblast, and maybe they will rework Airblast works completely differently than how it does now. Who knows? Because Airblast is kind of weird. And I wouldn't be surprised if they reworked it, if it got switched on the Source 2 into something that made a little bit more sense than the two hitbox thing. Oh, one more thing. I'm pretty sure that extinguishing is based around the projectile hitbox. I'm not 100% on it. I'm just pretty confident on that, because I've extinguished guys who were behind me before. But I've never airblasted the guy who's behind me. So, I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else, like I said. So, see ya!